What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, though? Welcome to the Bleav in Virginia podcast. See, I didn't do it again. Y'all thought I was going to do my old intro. It's the Bleav in Virginia podcast. I'm your host, Ahmad Hawkins. And look, I got a special show on tap for y'all today. In the past, like the past year, I want to say like the past year, it's been all like just ball hawk or petty hawk doing the show. This year, we're going to switch it up. We're going to be having guests. And we're going to be having video versions. So if you listen to this podcast now, this is actually a video version that will be up on my YouTube channel, the Ball Hawk Show podcast. I got a special guest, former teammate. He was a youngster, but he was taller than me. He was bigger than me. You know what I'm saying? But he ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in UVA history. So you will be excited about who's on the line today. Played 17. That's a long time. I played 10 years in the Arena League. He got me by 7. And had some very special years with the Houston Texans. Was a part of a very good draft class with Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers in 2004. He went in the 3rd round, the 90th pick. Got drafted to the Falcons. My good friend Michael Vick was there, so he got to spend some time with Ook. But I'm not going to delay it any further. I got the one and only. He was also a Pro Bowl MVP, the ACC Player of the Year. Without further ado, we got Matt Schaub on the show. Matt, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Hawk. Appreciate you having me on. Man, what an intro. I need to just have you follow me around, boost my ego a little bit, because around the house here, the wife and the kids, they really bring me back down to earth, keep me grounded, make sure I know my place.
Hey, man, I've been looking at Club Shay Shay. I'm trying to get on the same trajectory as Shannon Sharp, because the intros he be doing for folks, and a lot of times they don't even know what they accomplished until he says it. So, I just was like, let me spice it up a little bit. But I got you in the building, man. Happy to, you are the first video version guest on Bleav in Virginia podcast history.
Oh my goodness.
There you go, man. Why not bring the big gun out?
Honored. I need to chalk one up onto the resume now. No, that's awesome. I've followed you, Ahmad, and honestly, what you're doing and what you built with your podcast is just remarkable. It's awesome to see, and the connection that you still have there in Charlottesville and with the program. It's just awesome for what you're doing.
I appreciate you, man. Before we get this interview started, I want to let you know this podcast is presented by Aber Insurance. Go to Aber Insurance for all your insurance needs. That's home, business, auto, life insurance. The great people at Able. And if you haven't already, go follow Bleav in Virginia podcast on Apple, Spotify, all major podcast platforms. And make sure you visit Bleav.com, man. That's BLEAV.com. So, Matt, man, 2004 draft, round 3, 90th pick. Your name is called by the Atlanta Falcons. Did you have an inkling with, the conversation you had with your agents and during the process that you would be drafted by Atlanta back then?
To be quite honest, I had no idea. It was really out of left field. I knew where my place was amongst the other quarterbacks, and the ones you named in the intro, I knew I was behind Ben and Phillip and Eli. And J.P. Losman was actually another first rounder to the Bills in the 23rd pick out of Tulane. And I knew it was either him or me as the 4th or 5th guy. And so once he went, I honestly thought maybe in the 2nd round, Green Bay was, looking because it was near the end of Brett Favre's career or closer to the end. And obviously they ended up taking Aaron Rodgers the following year, which turned out pretty good for them. But throughout the process, I had one conversation at the combine with the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons at that time, Greg Knapp. And it was amongst all the meetings. I had a break, and it was on one of the benches in the hotel there for 10 minutes. We just talked football. And from the West Coast system in San Francisco, and was coming to Atlanta with Jim Moore Jr., who was the head coach at that time. And I just had that one conversation with him. And we had no idea. So on draft night, and back then it was 3 rounds on Saturday, 4 rounds on Sunday, and that was it. It wasn't a big spectacle like it is now and, on TV. Yep. But I got a call that Saturday night near the end of the 3rd round. It was a 770 number. My folks lived at the time and still do in the Atlanta area. So I'm like, this is an Atlanta area code. This is very weird. Picked it up, and lo and behold, they want to draft me. And this is when Mike Vick was coming off his major leg injury, and he missed that season in 2003. So I was elated that I was getting picked to a place that I knew well, because I'd come back to Atlanta, an off time there at UVA. And but at the same time, I was like, man, Mike Vick and me, we're very different quarterbacks, very different. I'm like, I think I need to start running a little bit more. I need to find a way to get faster so I can, if anything happens, that the offense won't skip a beat. But what a cool thing for me, a blessing to be drafted there. And, at that time, Mike Vick was one of the top 2 or 3 recognized athletes on the planet, him
Yes.
and Tiger Woods and, maybe Kobe Bryant at that time. I mean, that was it. And so I got to really see up close and personal how being a professional quarterback, how you got to handle your business and what you go through on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis with the media, game planning, just all those things. And, me and Mike had a great relationship and still do to this day. But there was that 1 week every season where I was like, Mike, the gloves are off. It was like Virginia Tech week. We had, because we also had D'Angelo Hall on that team. He was in my draft class. And so they had a bunch of Virginia Tech guys. So, my Who's, although they didn't come through for me for a couple of those years, we still had some good back and forth banter.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring up D'Angelo. So I'm gonna just ask you, you could be honest. Who talked more trash, D'Angelo or myself?
Ooh, D'Angelo.
That's
because see, it's different. It's different. You are on my side. When you talk trash and you're on the guy's side, that's great. I love it. Keep talking.
Yeah.
But when it's the other guy on the other side, and then when I got drafted, I'm in Atlanta, I'm going against him day in and day out. He's talking, he's chirping. But I always had the trump card on him, because that last year in college, we beat them.
Yep.
And Heath Miller and Marcus Hagans, they lit them up in the secondary. So I had that on him. But D'Angelo Hall, by a long shot. Sorry, Mott. I didn't know if you wanted me to say your name.
No, I didn't want you to say me. No, because D'Angelo talks more than me. I just get that on record. Not me saying it. Shout out to D'Angelo, man. And Algie Crumpler too, man. You went from Heath Miller to Algerion Crumpler. How was that?
Yes. What a great, best friend of a quarterback is that tight end position, and for us here in Atlanta and for Mike and myself, just learning the game and the offense that we ran, the tight end was such a huge part of it. And, he was just able to create separation, use his body and his length to make plays, just like Heath did his whole career. So just fortunate to have a guy like that to be able to find in the middle of the field, find that mismatch. We had good wide receivers, but when you have that guy patrolling the middle, it makes it tough on linebackers and safeties, because generally they're undersized to cover guys like that. Yeah,
no, that's definitely true, man. So your lone start that you got with the Falcons was versus the GOAT, Tom Brady and the Patriots, in which you threw for 298 yards. I'm going to say 300 yards. You threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 31-28 loss. How was that feeling, man? Like getting that first start is Tom Brady, Bill Belichick. They started winning Super Bowls around this time. Because they had already beat the Rams. So
they did. They were coming off a Super Bowl year.
Okay, yeah. So see it, but like I said, I'm rounding it up. You do for 300 yards in my book. 2 yards, give me the 2 yards. But how was that for your first start and your lone start in Atlanta?
I have to just backpedal and just make one minor correction. I did have one start the year before my rookie year. I started week 16 against the Saints and Aaron Brooks. The year prior, we had already had our spot in the playoffs.
Yeah,
we were the 2 seed, and we were going to get a first round bye at that time. And so I got to start that game the year before and didn't go so well. Wasn't very successful in that game. But we rested a lot of guys. And so I got to start that game. But my second start the following year, the Patriots were the defending champ. And Mike the week before, I believe he had an ankle. He got caught up and had an ankle. So I played like the second half against the Minnesota Vikings. And that following week against the Patriots, we weren't sure how he was doing, because how everyone knows how Mike plays, and he's got to be able to move around and have his mobility. and he just wasn't quite there. But during practice, we weren't sure. We're playing coy, but I got all the reps. And so then we knew Friday that I was going to be the guy. And what a cool spot to be. We're at home in the Georgia Dome playing the Patriots. I'm a second-year quarterback, second start, although I played a bunch in the preseason and certain times. But, we found ourselves – it was one of those back and forth. They won the first quarter. They were up 2 scores. Then we found a way to get back 2 scores in the second quarter, and I think it was tied or a one-point game at halftime. And then they came out and took a lead. We had to come back in the fourth quarter, and we drove down and scored and had a 2-point conversion to tie it, and we got it. But we left a little bit too much time for the other side for number 12. We left him about a minute 15 or minute 20, something like that. And, they also had Adam Vinatieri, who's one of the greatest kickers of all time. And they found a way to dink and dunk and make it down there for a field goal. But, we played hard, we played well. The numbers, they were decent, but, we fell short. But that was a really cool experience to be able to play against a team like that, coming off a Super Bowl, find ourselves down, battle back. It's that ebbs and flows, the adversity that you find not only in a career, but in a season, in a game, where you just got to battle it and just, find a way to make some plays.
So we got to rewind, because you said a name that Virginia fans perked up. You started versus Aaron Brooks the year before when he was with the Saints. How was that starting against AB?
Yeah, that was cool, because when I was being recruited, it was Aaron's last year at Virginia. And so I remember coming down to 2 games, coming down to my recruiting visit. I came down to watch y'all play. I think it was North Carolina under the lights at home, a night game. I think that was my recruiting visit, and I came down to another game. But, just an incredible quarterback, and just could throw it. Aaron, he had a cannon, and he could zip it and throw it to anywhere on the field. But, for me, looking at Virginia quarterbacks, when you look at going back to Sean Moore, and then you look at, the names Blunden, Mike Groh, but then Aaron Brooks, and, it's like, okay, that's the last quarterback before me to have beaten Virginia Tech. I know you were a big part of that too. So there's an iconic image that is all over Charlottesville of your touchdown. But just to see what Aaron did then when he made it in the league, and what he did in New Orleans and everything, it was just really cool to go head to head with another Cavalier quarterback. Because, and I knew he had always come back to grounds. And so I got to see him and meet him and talk with him a bunch. So we weren't foreign to one another, but it was cool to, be able to go up and head to head against him.
Yeah, man. I'm going to give you a fun fact about the Carolina game that you attended that year, 98. I dropped the touchdown pass right in front of the hill. Yeah.
I didn't remember that clearly. I didn't mean to bring that up. I would have left that out.
No, I hold myself accountable. I did, man. He scrambled. he got loose, and I was wide open, and the ball patted me down all the way to my feet and hit the ground. So that's why the Tech game is special to me, because I just dropped the touchdown pass the week before, and I was struggling with my confidence. So, yeah. That's ironic.
And then you go and you get it back, though, in the way you did against Virginia Tech, in-state rival. And, everyone forgets about what happened the week before.
Hey, they do. You're only good as your last game, as they say, and that's the truth. The week before. Oh, fun fact from the 2005 season. I want to see if you know this. Did you know that you were the most valuable player in the American Bowl preseason game in Tokyo, Japan, when y'all played in the Tokyo Bowl versus the Colts?
I did know that, and it was a really cool experience. But we did that was a 5th preseason game. Back then, it was some samurai swords. They were pretty sweet, nice. real samurai swords. It was really cool, and I remember going down again. I didn't know that they even gave a MVP of the game, but it was preseason, and Mike wasn't going to play a lot, so I got a lot of time because I was just going into my second year, and we had put a few drives together. But after the game, they had these samurai swords on this really cool display. I still have it downstairs in my basement. They're not sharp. They're still dull. So no one out there needs to worry.
Now, I can't,
they can't create any damage, but but they're real. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? Because we have to fly back internationally from Tokyo to Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
How I can't just we chartered the plane. We still got to go through customs. We still have to do all that. I'm like, I can't. So Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, was down there on the field. He goes, Matt, you want me to take these back for you on the plane? I said, yes, sir, please. That'd be great. And so they were back there in my locker, the following day. But I was like, yes, sir. Make sure those go in the cargo hold on the private jet. I appreciate it.
That's dope, man. Salute to Mr. Blank, man. I always seemed like a cool guy from afar. Never got the opportunity to meet him personally because he had a stake in the Georgia Force, I Bleav, their Arena Football League team. But yeah, he always seemed like he was a cool dude.
Yes.
But yeah, that preseason game, you were 11-13, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns as y'all came back to defeat the Colts, 27-21. Man, you was cooking, man. 11 for 13, 2 tugs. You talking about? I had a
man. You really dug in. You got there. You got some.
Come on, man. You my guy. You my guy. Wait till we get to the Texans. We about to get to the Texans where they traded for you in 2007 for second-round draft picks so they ain't just pull a heist to get you. They gave up 2 second-round picks. That's viable picks right there. Like back in the day, little things change today. Everybody seems like they get cut no matter what today and put on the practice squad. But back then, if you were drafted in the first 3 rounds, you're pretty much guaranteed to make the team. So The Texans saw something, even though you were backup, you started a game in 2004, 2005. They make this trade in 2007 for those second-round picks. Like, what was going through your mind when you were transitioning from Atlanta, where you have family, now to Houston, Texas?
Right. Very fortunate. I mean, the head coach, Gary Kubiak, at the time just finished his first season as the head coach of the Houston Texans, and he come from being in Denver at the Broncos as a play caller for, I think 10 or 12 years, and also played quarterback and backed up John Elway for a number of years. So for me, and the style of offense was very similar to what I ran at Virginia and also what we had run at the Falcons. And this is a team that, when just on paper, when I looked at it, the first name that jumped off the page was Andre Johnson. And this is an opportunity to go and play and be a part of his career.
Yeah.
Which was a selling point in and of itself, but also a team that was up and coming. They were young, 5 years into the franchise, with a coach that, I always respected from afar, and the offenses that he ran, and I felt like this is a great fit. And we were able to play golf the day before the trade was finalized, just to get a feel for one another, make sure hey, this is a good match. The head coach and quarterback, you're always tied together. And we just hit it off right away and clicked. And I just remember calling my agent, and it was actually near where my agent was based out of in California, because I was out there for a charity function, and said, we got to get this done. I want to be a Houston Texans. And so then they went to work with the organization on hammering out the details, right? And, you just mentioned about the second round picks and the compensation, and, off I went. And man, it was such a cool experience, because now all the work that I put in, both at Virginia, but also in 3 years backing up Mike and the Falcons, and learned how to be a pro, what it takes to be the quarterback of the team, the face of the franchise, yada, yada. Like, I had a firm grasp on how I wanted to handle that. And, this was my opportunity and my chance, and couldn't have been more excited. So within 2 days was there signing and doing the press conference. And, I was just thrilled to be part of a team that wanted me. Took a chance on me to give me an opportunity. And it was my job to make the most of it, and, get a hold of my teammates and say, hey, I'm here. I'm not just here to be this or that. I'm here to be one of you guys, and we're going to do this together. And so it was that just started the whole process.
Yeah. With you stepping in to Houston, being penciled in as a starter because they make the trade for you, how was the approach? Like the previous years in camp, you pretty much know you're backing up Mike. Now you pretty much assume, because I know you personally, you're not going to just say I'm the starter. You're going to make sure you work for it. But the perception is you're the guy now. So does the approach change for you personally? Was your approach always the same, or did you feel like you had to ramp things up?
No, my approach was always the same. I prided myself on my preparation and just going about my business the right way. Because I feel like we all hear it all the time. You can't just flip the switch, right? You have to.
Yeah.
The lights cut on or the ball's kicked off in a game. You can't just flip the switch and change. Like, you're only as good as your preparation. And I always thought the better prepared I was, whether in practice, weight room, film room, if I just show guys what I'm about and what I do, I could talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but guys don't respect that. Guys don't rally around that. They don't want to play hard for that. They want to play hard for the guys that bust their tail, that want to be in the weight room, want to watch film, want to stay after, want to do extra, want to take guys out to dinner, want to have them over to their house to just hang, watch college football, create that camaraderie within the locker room and do things and be a part of the team and one of the guys in the locker room. And that's something that I always focused on, because once we got on the grass, that's what we're there for. But how do you then translate that to be successful on Sundays or Thursdays or Monday nights, whatever the case is? And that's goes beyond just the practice field. There's so many more things tied to that. And that's what I really focused on. I wasn't concerned with, I'm the starter and I got to put undue pressure. There's pressure in and of itself when you play this game, and that's what you love about it. But I always just focused on the details of how do I prepare, because guys are watching. I want to make sure I step in the huddle and I can spit the play call out. I know my checks. I know what I'm doing and operate efficiently. You demonstrate that to guys, man, there's nothing that they won't do for you.
Yeah. And I mean, in the show, in your preparation, because, the first 2 games, you were very accurate. Like, I always look at completion percentage. And I know a lot of times people say, sometimes guys completion percentage is one way just because they may dink and dunk. And I'm glad I got a former quarterback of it, because you still have to process information to dink and dunk. You still have to know where your outlets are, what coverage is ran, who the playmaker is, things of that nature. But I mean, you came out the gate, 2 quarterback ratings over 100, 71% completion rate, at least 220 yards. The first 2-0 start in franchise history. And then in week 4, you played somebody familiar. Who did you play? You remember who you played week 4 that first year?
That had been Peyton Manning.
Nah, it was your old team, the Falcons.
Was it?
Yeah. That week
it was
4.
I thought that was week 3. I thought the Falcons was week 3. You got me. There's been a lot of hits to the head since.
Hey, man, don't do that, man.
Going back to it though, and I agree with you on the completion percentage thing. And I always, even going back to Virginia and, prided myself on completion percentage, because good things happen when you get the ball in hands of playmakers, right? And, the thing about it is I always looked at yards per attempt. And if you can get your yards per attempt, I think it's different in college and the NFL, but if you can get that in 7+ range yards per attempt, you're having a good day and you're being accurate, because you can dink and dunk. You can throw a lot of screens. You can throw a lot of shallow crosses and slants and this and that. But if you're putting it in the right spot where your guy can catch and run and not have to adjust his body and he can make something happen with it in his hands, then that's fine. That's a good thing, because then you're getting yards, you're making first down, staying on schedule. So, but I think that's something for sure. You look at college offenses nowadays, how many bubble screens can you throw? How many just hitches can you throw? Like there's a lot of those RPO aspects that are dink and dunk, and they're an extension of the running game. But if your guys can make plays with it after the fact because you're accurate with it, there's a place for you in this game at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And I think a lot of times I call them the armchair All-Americans, tear down quarterbacks that dink and dunk, because they play video games, vertical passing games. It's very attractive, but they don't understand like a lot of things that have to go right to be accurate in the vertical passing game. It's a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like,
there is.
The deep ball seems simple, but it's difficult, to just constantly tuck it down the field, because if it's incomplete, the clock stops. And you could really set your defense up if you trying to push the ball down the field and you coming up empty. Like, that game becomes long for them because they're right back on the field, no time, really run out the clock. And I just feel like you said it in your explanation. Like, when you dink and dunk, it becomes an extension of the running game because you're still causing those D linemen to go like this. Everybody got to chase the ball. Chase the ball.
100%. Yes.
So
yes, you wear them out, get them tired, and all the while your defense is drinking Gatorade and just staying over on the bench, which is a good thing. And so you're totally right. You gotta play the game, and it's easy to say, oh, let's just take 3 shots and throw go routes. Maybe we'll get a pass interference on one of them, or we'll hit one. Maybe, but you could go 2 series where you're 0 for 6 and punted twice, and you've had the ball for 18 seconds. Like that doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So the 2007-2008 season, you had some peaks and then injuries, kind of hit you. How was that like for you when you're the starter and you get injured? Because I know you went through some injuries your last year at UVA. Was that with your shoulder? Was that the last year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
it was my throwing shoulder. Yes, first game against Duke.
Yeah. So now you're a pro, you're a starter, you're having success, you're showing the potential while they traded for you, but then you start battling injuries those 2 years. If I could just jump forward, like what changed from the 2008 season versus the 2009 when you started every single game? Did you do something different with your body? Like Tom Brady talks about his diet. We know LeBron invests a lot of money in his body. Did you do anything differently that season compared to the 2 seasons prior while you remain healthy?
Yeah, I think there was a combination of things, to be honest. I think there was a change in how I approached my off seasons, especially the February, March, April, the lead in those months before the off season conditioning program started with the team, whether it was with my trainer and just working on strength and just working on development, and rehabbing, making sure, there's a lot that the trainers can do, but the weight room is also a way to really rehab injuries. And, I dealt with a shoulder or 2 and then a knee in 2008. Yes, 2008. And those things you can help prevent further injury with the weight room and what you're doing from a strength perspective, plyometrics, certain things, and as well as diet. And it was at that time where a lot of that stuff was really coming into focus. Before that, there wasn't a lot of study or science behind a lot of what now, right? I mean, we're talking 15 plus years ago, but now there's so much more information. There's so many more things that you can do away from the building at your home or third-party services, whether it's, the ice baths, the cryotherapy, the dry needling, all these different things that had they been around 20 years ago, man, it would have been amazing. Yeah. The other thing, luck played into it. You go playing and the injury rate's 100% in the NFL. We all know that, and in football in general. But you got to get lucky at some point where you just don't have that devastating injury, and then in 2011, I ended up having one that derailed the last 6 weeks of the regular season for me, or 5 weeks. But, a lot of it, there's so many factors into it. But also just knowing how to play through things, how to manage things. There's certain things that happen to you that you can play through, certain things that, man, it's really hard to. You try, but whether it's the swelling or just whatever it is. I remember playing through an ankle in 2009, the first month of the season, where I had a brace in my shoe and, all this tape and a spat. Like I had to get a size 2 bigger than my normal shoe. I wear a 13 and I had to wear a size 15 on my left foot for a month of the season just to be able to fit this cast or not a cast, but a brace around my ankle. Cause I got a high ankle, the 3rd preseason game, of the preseason. And just to be ready for week 1, I had to really do a lot to secure my ankle, but you just learn how to manage things.
No, that's great. That's a great segue because I was about to really talk about this 2009 season. So now I got some more sauce to add to hype up this season. You was playing on 1 foot for at least a month. You wearing a shoe that's too big. And this is the season where you led the Texans to a 9-7 record, the first winning record in team history. You led the NFL in passing yards, 4,770 yards. You led the NFL, the greatest football league in America, in the world, in completions, yards per game, passing attempts. You finished 5th in touchdowns. I think Drew Brees led it that year with like 38. Your quarterback rating was 98.6. You had 9 games reaching at least 300 yards passing. You were selected to the Pro Bowl, replacing Tom Brady, injury replacement. And then you not only got to the Pro Bowl, Matt, you kicked the door down and said, let me get this MVP from y'all too. Talk about that 2009 season, man. That was a special season for the franchise and yourself because, look, Matt is very humble. I gotta add stuff to it because you're going to see how he answers this. He's not going to take a lot of credit. But on one foot, man, how did you do it?
Well, that one foot was just for September, right? But it was, and then everything felt better. But I mean, that season, one thing going back to 2000, the lead up to that, one thing that we know about that style offense that we ran from Denver in the San Francisco days is the zone running scheme. And one thing we struggled with for a couple of years, we didn't have much problem throwing the football with our weapons and the design of our passing game. But a lot of our play action, while it worked, wasn't as effective because we couldn't run the ball as well as we wanted to for a reason. But that 2009 season, we started to be effective running the ball. We got a young kid from West Virginia, Steve Slayton, who was a tremendous runner. And then we had, towards the end of that year, Arian Foster, who burst onto the scene the last month of that season. So we had runners, and our offensive line was really coming together. But there's a lot of factors that go into being successful throwing the football. Yes, as a quarterback, you got to make good decisions, put the ball where it's supposed to be, find the open receiver, all those things. Yes, you got to operate the offense. But when you have the weapons that we did and, the offensive line that we had to be able to give me time and protect, because we didn't just drop back and throw it. We had play actions. We had bootlegs. We had a lot of different things in our system. It was a tremendous group effort. And with those things and the Pro Bowl and all that, went with Andre Johnson and was able to throw him his first touchdown in the Pro Bowl in that game. He had been three or four times before that and never caught a touchdown. So to be able to be in it and then hit him for a touchdown on a hitch and go, that was pretty cool because he hadn't had one. But that season was a lot of fun. We fell short. We were in the running for a wild card spot that last game. We beat who did we beat that year? I totally forget. I'm drawing a blank. Jacksonville, I think maybe. And, if we had, I think it was Cincinnati and the Jets were playing, and we needed Cincinnati to win and we got in, or the Jets to win, to beat Cincinnati to get in, and it didn't happen for us. So we were in a tie break, and so we didn't get in, but we were now no longer a losing franchise. We've created a winner, and there was a lot of excitement from that. Our defense was coming around. So all those numbers were great to answer your question, but I'm not going to fall for the trap, Hawk. You know that.
Hey, man.
You
gave me another opportunity. You didn't beat Jacksonville. You beat the Patriots. January 3rd, 34-27.
That's right. I forgot because that was before. I was thinking it was not until later that the last game of the season was a divisional opponent.
Yeah. So y'all actually ended that season because I always look at games quarterly. Shout out to Coach Vermeil. Y'all went 4-0 those last 4 games. Y'all beat Seattle, St. Louis, Miami, and then the Patriots.
Yep.
Man,
it was a good run that last end of that year. That was a good run because it was like you said. I mean, if you finish 9-7, means we were 5-7 going into the last month.
Yeah.
With all the great stats and great things that were happening, we still weren't finding a way to win.
Yeah, that's true. But I just want to continue this trend of giving Matt his flowers. So y'all bear with me. That season, Matt threw for more yards than Peyton Manning, who was second. Tony Romo was third. Aaron Rodgers was fourth. Tom Brady was fifth, and Drew Brees was sixth. He had a better pass completion percentage than Tony Romo, which we know because that's Tony Romo. Aaron Rodgers, who was usually one of the more accurate guys. Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. Come on, man. Drew Brees led that year with 70%, but come on, man. That's how special that season was, man. Come on. And since we talking about special season, I'm going to skip to 2012. Y'all went 12-4 that year.
We did, and before we get there, I gotta say though, as good as that 2012 team was, that 2011 team.
Okay.
And when I get together with a lot of the guys I played with, that 2011 team was even more special. It really was. You know, we were better that year. We all were back for 2012, but that 2011 team, you know, unfortunately for myself, you know, I got hurt, and after a week of a 10 or 11 game against Tampa Bay, but that team was something else. Our defense was really coming into focus and playing really, really good. J.J. Watt was a rookie, and he was starting to manhandle people that season. And Andre was having a big year. Everyone on our offense. Arian was having a huge year.
Yeah.
But then it just got derailed. And while we still finished and got in the playoffs and won the division, you know, we lost in the divisional round. But that 2012, there was a lot of expectations naturally after what we did as a team in 2011. We weren't sneaking up on anybody anymore. You know, we were, we were that, glitzy kind of preseason pick to make some noise in the AFC. So we were getting everyone's best shot, which in the NFL you do anyway, but there's still some of that week to week where you might have a letdown, but we weren't getting that. We were getting everyone's best shot.
And I'm glad you brought up 2011, because just looking back on that season, the team went 10-6, but Dre played just 7 games. It looks like, but your running game with Aaron Foster and Ben Tate, Aaron had 12-24, 10 touchdowns. Ben Tate had 942 and 4 touchdowns. That defense was ranked second overall. So like you said, the defense was coming to their own. So I understand why you went back to that 4th in the league in points given up, which is huge. I always say the first thing I look at for a defense is points. How many points a game a defense give up? Because, you know, you give up yards, but if I'm not giving up 6 and I'm making you settle for a field goal, or I'm getting a red zone turnover like that, that can be more demoralizing than anything. So I'm glad you brought up that 2011 season. And you talked about J.J. Watt. Like, what was it like just seeing a guy like that enter in the locker room and play defense the way that he did?
Well, yeah, for him, because when we drafted him, he was a relative unknown to the guys in the locker room. You know, the people upstairs that do all their scouting and do their work, obviously they did their homework and knew what JJ was about. But for us as a team, we just knew, okay, we're getting a defensive lineman. That's cool. That's great. Because we know the games are won in the trenches, offensively and defensively, but we didn't know the impact that he was going to have. You know, we're like, all right, great. We have a hole on the interior of our defense, and put him with the likes of a D'Amico Ryans, a Brian Cushing, a Connor Barwin on the edge, Mario Williams at the time, you know, with the secondary, you know, put him into that puzzle. Great. We got a big guy on the inside. But then halfway through that 2011 season, just to see his strength and how that rookie wall that people hit, he was busting down that wall. Like it wasn't keeping him from being successful. And he was just continued to ascend, and you could see what he ended up becoming at that time. But it was really after that season when he really transformed. Like whatever he did when he went back to Wisconsin to train, and he came back a totally different human from a physicality standpoint, and just what he looked like, which credit goes to him because he just saw what he was able to do, and he wasn't going to be denied the next level. So it was cool to really see that come to be, and how he took pride in that, because we all benefited from his tremendous play.
Yeah. And you said a name that a lot of people probably just kind of just let pass by. Mario Williams, when he was coming out of NC State and the buzz he had, can you just talk about like just seeing him in practice with his athletic gifts as well? For
sure. My last year at Virginia in 2003, that season we played at NC State, and he was a freshman. And, he was hard to miss because he's 6'6", and at the time he was probably only like 240, 250 pounds, but he was a very imposing figure. Like if you wanted to throw a hitch or a slant to his side, you had to navigate his arms and trying to block it. And at that time, you didn't really know what he was going to be as a freshman, but you saw the physical gifts that he had.
Yeah.
And then when I got traded and he was just picked in 2006, the year before, man, I think at that time now he's like 285, 290, just a specimen coming off of the edge. And, you know, you really, guys like that, guys like Mario, JJ, I played against a couple of DNs in Indianapolis, Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney. They're guys that you have to game plan for. You have to, when you think about the run game or you think about the pass protections, that's the first thing you think about. How are we going to block them? How are we going to turn protections? How are we going to handle these players? And because they're game wreckers, and Mario could be a game wrecker on any given day. And so the physical gifts he has and guys like that they're special.
So while I have you here, I know, you know, we still got to talk about some UVA football. Just reflecting on your Texans career, like you got a lot of major records, whether it's career wins, pass completions, pass attempts in a single season. The list goes on and on all the records that you have. But the one record that jumped out to me that a lot of fans don't know, 527 yards, November 18th, which is one day for my wife's birthday, November 19th, 2012 versus Jacksonville. That's a divisional foe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, that's special. 43 of 55. That's 78% completion rate. 527 yards. We're not going to thank you dinking and dunking. So 78% is really good. Take me back to November 18, 2012. 527 yards. Did you feel like you threw for that many yards? When you was eating pregame, did you know you was going to throw for that many yards? What did Dre say to you before the game for you to throw for that many yards? Take me back to that day if you can, because that's second most passing yards in NFL history. Norm Van Brocklin, 554 yards. So it had to be a penalty or something to take some yards away from you, because I know you really broke it, but it was a penalty or something.
I wish I could say that. But no, I think that was a legit number. You know, when you're playing the game and you know this, like, you don't really know what's happening. You just know what the score is, right? You just know you got to score more. We found ourselves in a shootout against Jacksonville. They had their quarterback got hurt, and Chad Henne came in and started lighting us up with, I forget what receiver they had. They hit a couple plays, big pass plays. So we found ourselves in a dogfight, and we needed to put points on the board. And we were able to run the ball efficiently, but we were really getting some big yards in the passing game. And we came out and we hit Andre 3 straight plays the first drive of the game and got us down in the red zone. And then I hit one of our backup receivers, Keyshawn Martin, for the touchdown. But you just, when you get in the flow of the game, you really don't know from week to week what it's going to take to win. And we just found ourselves in one of those games where we had to throw it in order to win. And we liked what we had in their secondary to go against and to attack. And we had a good beat on what they were running coverage wise. And Gary Kubiak called with an awesome game for us and, you know, put us in a position to be successful. When you have a guy like Andre Johnson, who I think he ended up having 273 yards that day and had a walk-off, you know, wide receiver screen against the blitz in overtime to win it. And that was back before these overtime rules now. That was when it was still 15 minutes.
Yep.
So we played, and that happened with like 2 minutes left in the overtime. So we nearly played 5 quarters of football that day. Wow. But yeah, you just make plays, and then you look up, and I remember being in the locker room after the game. We were all dog tired. We just played like 74 minutes of football, and that's when, whether it's a media guy or one of your reporters, they'll let you know what the stats were or what you did, and that's when it hit me. I'm like, man, we did pretty good today. You know, we knew we were happy because we won, but the numbers, it's like, wow, really? Second all time? Like, that was surprising just to hear 500 yards, because it didn't feel like it. I knew Andre had more than 200. That was pretty obvious, because I knew we hit some go routes, some deep in cuts, and then obviously the 50-yard screen to win the game. But it was just cool to come away with a win. The funny thing about that, we played in overtime on Sunday against the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
We followed it up that Thursday on Thanksgiving Day with a 11 a.m. kick against Detroit. We were in Detroit. So 4 days later, we find ourselves playing Detroit on Thanksgiving Day, and we ended up going into overtime with them.
Oh, wow.
And we kicked a game-winning field goal with like a minute left in overtime. So we essentially played 10 quarters of football in 4.5 days. So we deserved that weekend off after that Thanksgiving game. But, yeah, I mean, that Jacksonville game, it was a lot of fun. Just really cool to have my name up there with a guy like Norm Van Brocklin, and I think Warren Moon's up there. I just wanted I need some tape of that Norm Van Brocklin game to see what he did to get 550 whatever yards, because that's pretty impressive.
Nah, man, it's like Will Chamberlain's 100 game. We ain't got no footage.
Right? Yeah, just we know it happened, but we know when that's
what happens. Hey, I just want to again reiterate. So out of the top 25 single regular season passing games, you have the highest completion rate of a quarterback throwing at least 50 passes, 78.2, because Joe Burrow had 46 attempts and he completed 80% when he threw for 525, and Ben 81.6, but he attempted 49 passes. So we got him by one pass. So we'll keep us number one. So, I mean, you're on the list with Boomer Esiason, Warren Moon, Dan Marino, Tom Brady, Phil Simms. Like, I mean, to be number 2 overall, man, like if so people can say anything they want about Matt Schaub, but to be top 2 as far as passing yards in a single game in this great league called the National Football League is a huge accomplishment. And if they look at what you accomplished as a Houston Texans quarterback, it's phenomenal, man. Most career game winning drives, 14, most 4-quarter comebacks, most 400-yard passing games in the career, 300-yard passing games, consecutive 300-yard passing games. Like, most wins is the most important, of course.
Right.
And I do want to, Petty Hawk, want to ask you a question. Were you still in the team where Andre turned green versus that DB? I ain't gonna say his name because
heck yeah. That was one. That was like, of all the plays that Andre made in the passing game, you know, our wide receivers had to block a lot, and he did a good job. He embraced that part of the game. But I remember it was a run going to the right. So I'm going to hand off, and he's on the left.
Yeah.
And I remember carrying out my fake. You know, you got to sell the fake, like you still have it for the backside, and coming around, and he is just throwing haymakers at Cortland Finnegan on the backside. And that was just brutal. And that was years in the making. Tennessee was a divisional rival of ours. So we had many heated battles.
Yeah. Hold on. I think we having some technical difficulties right quick. Let me see. Matt, can you still hear me? Hold on. There we go. We back. So what were you saying?
Sorry.
You said it was years in the making with those two?
So obviously Tennessee is a divisional rival of ours, and we had some major battles with their defense, and you know, we were taking care of them pretty good that day. And so it was just brewing this thing. We had a scuffle on our sideline in Tennessee earlier that season involving Cortland Finnegan. And he was a talker, and he was a player you wanted to have on. You liked when he was on your team because he played hard and he got under your skin. He tried to get you off your game. But when you were going against him, you did not like him. You didn't at all. And so it was just, and Andre's a quiet-natured guy. Obviously great player, but he doesn't say a lot, doesn't talk a lot. He just lets his play speak. And obviously he had enough, because I came off and he just ripped his helmet off, a couple haymakers. My whole concern was we played the Eagles, I Bleav, the following week. And, you know, we know that they both got thrown out, going to get fined. We just wanted to make sure that he was available for the following game, which he ended up being, because I was like, I don't want to have to go without my guy.
Yeah. Can you imagine that today, though? They were probably suspending him for a couple of games, like today's climate, it seems.
It would be more than like a $20,000 fine and
Yeah.
getting tossed out for sure. Nowadays those things are, they rule with an iron fist on things like that now.
But then again, though, Andre has a very good track record, high character guy. So I think guys like that do get the benefit of the doubt, as they should, because he always went about the game the right way. Because being a former receiver, I always hate when they call receivers divas, because I always point out dudes like Andre Johnson, like a Calvin Johnson, like Larry Fitzgerald, Reggie Wayne, like the list, Marvin Harrison. Like, I think it's more level-headed receivers than the diva receivers, because I like to throw shots at y'all quarterbacks too. Like Aaron Rodgers,
and you should.
Aaron Rodgers is a diva. Like, quarterbacks can be divas. Brett Favre's a diva, great player. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is a diva quarterback. I think he just competes. But everybody got diva in them.
It takes one or two that can spoil the bunch, right? And give a bad rap for the bunch. And it's usually the loudest or the one that makes the most noise and, things like that. But there's going to be a little diva. You got to have a little ego, right? But when it starts affecting the team and the output of your play or people around you's play or the building, how the locker room, how it is. Once you start tearing that down, there's no reconciling that, right? And so, but everyone's got to have a little ego. I mean, we're all alpha males out there playing it with the best game in the world. And so, but you can't just let that affect everything else.
Yeah, I always feel like no matter how loud a player is, the play has to still be louder. So if you're going to talk loud, which is fine, you got to understand your play better match that noise, or either the fans going to hold you accountable or your opponent going to definitely hold you accountable. And the last person you want holding you accountable is your coach, because that means you might be out of there. So, it's fine to be loud, but your play should always be the loudest thing that speaks for you at the end of the day.
No question.
But yeah, man, I just wanted to really, really like give you your flowers for the time you spent with the Texans. I do feel like, we talked about this on air, and you might can speak to this. You were actually blessed to play with receivers who mimic how you approach the game, as far as, and we talked about divas. Like, you didn't have diva receivers that were very boisterous and get me the damn ball. How was that for you as a quarterback to not have to really go through those in the public eye? You may go through things at practice that's normal, but as far as like publicly, you never had to dealing with the receiver openly saying, I need to get the ball, or having off-season issues.
Very fortunate. But I credit, a guy like Andre Johnson, who we've been talking about, with setting that tone, because he was the guy in that room for the Houston Texans. And everyone that came in there, you just have to look at him, how he conducts himself and conducts his business, right? And if he's not like that, none of those other guys have any reason to be like that. And if they are, they get found out and you're not there. And that's credit to our head coach too, because he's not bringing in guys that are like that. But when your superstars aren't like that, no one else has an excuse to be like that. So he was all about the team and whatever it took. There were games where Andre would catch 3 or 4 balls. They might be 3 or 4 for 80 yards, but Arian runs for 230, and we have, Owen Daniels go for 90. Like, we have other guys, and he's just happy that we win. Because he's going to get his catches. Guys like that, they don't have to say, hey, I'm open, or go to the coach, call plays for me to get the ball. We're trying to get you the ball. That is our game plan. And it just so happens sometimes the ball might not find you. But if you're griping, moaning, complaining, that just festers on the sideline, and other players see that, and then they start doing it, and they think it's okay. But when you don't have that, and you have guys that – like Andre, and like, my last 5 years I was with the Atlanta Falcons. Julio Jones is another guy that's like that just wants to win, and he doesn't care. He's going to get his catches. He doesn't have to come over to Matt Ryan or to the coach and say, give me the ball, throw it to me. Like, we're trying. We want to. And when it comes to the fourth quarter, we got to make plays. Guess where it's going? It's coming to you. Like, you don't need to have that when you have guys like that are not like that, because young guys are going to end up emulating what they see from your stars.
Yeah, and I think that I never thought about that. That's the greatest comeback I think you could tell a receiver. It's like, hey man, y'all trying to give me the ball. And you just look, don't you think we try? Like, you are best asset. If you don't think I'm trying to get you the ball. I can only imagine, man, like being a quarterback and a receiver's like, Hawk, give me the ball, man. Like, what you doing? And I just look at him. Oh, so you think I'm not trying to get my best dude the football? Like, what we talking about right now?
And there's only one ball, and there's 5 eligible receivers. Like, look, I'm trying to throw it to the open guy based on what the defense is doing. So,
and a lot of times, for the folks at home, a lot of times when you line up as a receiver and you know the play call, you've gone over coverage and who's going to be the first read and who should get the ball. And as you take your step, if they roll it, like I went from priority to damn. Like everybody got that feeling where they give it's bump and you give some and you went off the line of scrimmage and you stack and you see the safety just roll over top. Like, God, you know what I'm saying? Like, so a lot of times I'll give receivers some grace. A lot of times that body language they see from a receiver, sometimes it's not in the quarter, but sometimes it's like, damn, they keep rolling the coverage over here and I can't get the ball now.
It can be so misconstrued, right? Everyone thinks like he's bad at the quarterback because he didn't get the ball. Well, no, there's a lot of other things at play. He might be tired. He might be just frustrated at the coverage. Like, there's a lot of those things. And that just goes to announcers or cameras or people's assuming the wrong things, the viewers, because they don't know. They never played receiver, right? They're not like you that, know what the game in totality. And, there's a lot that goes into it. So let's not create a feud where there's not one.
Yeah. So, man, you're really good at this. You don't realize how many alley-oops you throwing me right now to segue. You just said a lot of people don't know, or announcers don't know. Speaking of announcers, on June 5th, 2024, it was announced that Matt Schaub, along with myself, will be joining the UVA radio broadcast crew this season. How excited are you to get in the booth and talk football for Wahoo fans?
Man, I'm thrilled. Next Saturday can't get here fast enough, right? I mean, I got all my stuff out here. I've been watching film and researching and just making sure I'm on my P's and Q's for next Saturday. But man, I'm thrilled. I couldn't be more excited to join you, Hawk, and just knowing how much you know about the game and the team, and just we relate to one another. I was fortunate to watch you in your last 2 years in UVA when I was a youngster and just trying to find my way around grounds, and you were that veteran that was very helpful to me. So thrilled to be alongside you and John Freeman and just start a new chapter and find my way in this world and of radio or TV and broadcasting. And so I'm really excited about it.
For the fans who don't know your transition, you do radio also in the Atlanta area as well, correct?
I do. I haven't done a broadcast. This will be my first go around doing live games, but I've done studio radio and call-ins and things of that nature. So I'm not foreign to that side of it. But the live game action, this will be uncharted waters, but exciting nonetheless.
Hey man, you had to dodge the White Freeney and Robert Mathis. Wow. Like, I mean, you humble, but let me tell you something, brother. You won't be getting concussed if you take too long to deliver the ball on radio.
Well, I know that you'll be next to me, so if I do, it's because you gave me a little elbow, like Cutting needed me to shut up.
Hey man, we had a practice run through at the first scrimmage. I thought you did a very good job, man. Like, this is my first year in the booth as well. I filled in for Tony Covenant one time in 2019 for the UNC game, but even that, it's gonna be it's a learning process because we both respect the craft. We're just not taking it for granted. But while we're talking about UVA football right now, so today when we're recording this on Saturday, August 24th, which is, like Matt said, 1 week before they take the field versus the Richmond Spiders at 6 p.m. It was just released, so we ain't got to speculate anymore. Number 10, Anthony Colandrea has been named the starting quarterback for the University of Virginia. What's your thoughts on young Anthony Colandrea?
I really like his game. Going back to last season, him filling in as a freshman, as a true freshman, first-year player, stepping into that role when Tony Muskett got hurt, I felt he did a great job as a freshman. He has a wow factor about him. He's very athletic, can break when plays break down. He can make something happen outside the pocket, and he has the athleticism to then gain yards in the running game. So I like what he brings to the table from an explosive aspect, in the pass and the run. The one thing we have to guard against is some of the mistakes and some of the decisions. When a play breaks down, it's okay to throw it away. It's okay to, live to fight another down and not force the ball. And I think that's what we're looking for in his second year, is that growth and that maturity. And when we did the scrimmage, we saw some of that. We saw him checking it down. We saw some throwaways. We saw some plays break down, run. I think now there might be more of a effort to protect himself, run it, get the first down, get out of bounds, slide. It's a long year. But I'm really excited about Anthony Colandrea and what he brings to the team. A lot of moxie, a lot of energy. He loves playing the game, and it just shows in practice. It shows in everything he does. So I'm really excited about it. I think it was a close race when you look at the summer and all the tape from camp. And I think for Tony Elliott, I'm kind of speaking for him, but I think this is a good decision for him if it's close, going with the younger guy with the wow factor. And now that gives him 3 years to really just explode and take the reins of this team and this program. So I think it's in good hands going forward. So I'm really excited about Anthony Colandrea.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I'm glad I got you on the show today, because you could speak for it personally. After I left in 2000, you got a new head coach. Coach Al Grove comes in. Mike Grove comes, his son, and you have a quarterback competition, yourself and Bryson Spinner. Because the previous year, when Dan got injured, I remember he got injured versus, I want to say, what game was it? Dan had all those passing yards. It wasn't Maryland when he hurt his hamstring that year, was it? I forgot one year, but I want to say this. It's a two-layer question. Instead of me trying to remember when Dan got hurt, could you imagine yourself in 1999 coming in as a true freshman? Coach Wells was still the coach, and Coach Tranquil was offensive coordinator, trying to run the offense. And then secondly, how is it when there's a competition like it was when you were in Spinner, just never knowing if you're going to start and when you're going to get pulled out type of situation?
Yeah, for your first question, as a in 1999 as a first year, no, I could not have expected how that would have went. There was a lot of things with the offense and just terminology and just running the operation, just trying to get out of the huddle. Obviously, if I had to play, I would have had to practice and the reps and all of that, but it would have been a different situation. And so I can't imagine how that would have went. And, I feel like it would have been okay, but
because we actually ran the ball more too.
I knew I was redshirt, and I was, we signaled back then, and I was the dummy signal caller. So I was just over there just making all sorts of, so to then have to go in, it would have been a different beast. But going to the competition, like you said, the 2001 season, me and Bryson Spinner, we were the same year, and he played a little bit the year prior in a game or two in 2000 and had some success. And then we went in when Al Grove came in, and we had a full out competition between me and him to be the starter. And I ended up starting the first game that year against Wisconsin, which went sideways. We had like a 2-hour lightning delay, something like that. But didn't go great for us. I remember Antoine Womack hit him on a screen pass. He went 80 and it was called back, man. And that was early in the game. But we ended up just going back and forth that whole year, Bryson and I, and it changed who was starting. Sometimes it changed in the middle of the game, and not necessarily for negative play. It was a back and forth thing. And we both brought things to the offense that were a little slightly different from the other, but after that year, Bryce ended up transferring, and then I ended up being the guy the next 2 years. But then I ended up getting benched the first game of the 2002 season. And Marcus Hagan's, good friend of mine, ended up playing quarterback for the Who's after I departed in 2003. But then I came back in a game later and, went on to play, but then got hurt. I think it was something about the first game of every season. Then in 2003, the first drive of the game against Duke, and there's a lot of hype around our team, and we're on the goal line and get hit from behind and separate my throwing shoulder. So I ended up missing 2 games for that. But then coming back to play. So there's a lot of adversity, and that's one thing this game will teach you, whether you're in a competition for the job, which always makes you better. It makes you and the other guy and those around you, I think, better because they see how hard you're working as a quarterback to win the job from the other guy, and vice versa, right? It makes everyone better. But at the same time, whether it's that or injuries, like, man, you go through adversity in this game. And it's whoever handles those hard times better that last and can come out of it, and whether it's win football games or be successful or whatever, it makes you better, right? And that's football and that's life, right? I mean, that's just a little bit of advice for everyone out there, man. We go through adversity. It's how you handle it better than the other person, and how you can handle it better yourself. That's the way I approach some of those hard times.
I love it. So, all right, you're a quarterback, so I'm going to ask you, how does the rotation of 2 quarterbacks truly affect the team? Because everybody is always a question. I look at fans, what they say. So I'm using them to provide questions to you so you can answer our fan base, because this is something. And granted, we won't have to deal with it now because we're not running a 2 quarterback system like everybody thought when they heard a soundbite from Coach. But you just said you might get switched out during the game. Does that affect the team, seeing that it's 2 quarterbacks running in and out, in your opinion?
It really does. It really does, because then you have multiple voices. You have sometimes there's different. I mean, I'm not saying specifically in the case when I was playing in Virginia, but depending on what type of system you're running, you can have different play calls. You can have a different, basically, offense depending on who's in the game. And that can affect certain guys' demeanor, right? For better or worse. It shouldn't, but it's human nature that if you're more of a running quarterback and you're going to run the RPOs or zone read stuff, man, wide receivers might get a little dejected that there's a change versus someone that's going to throw it more. Like, that is a reality of the thing. As far as the player and the quarterback position, it can affect you. Absolutely. Because then you're looking over your shoulder. You're wondering if I make a bad decision or I throw an incompletion. Like, it could be something as simple as you made the right read, but you made a bad throw. Am I coming out? And then you can't really cut it loose and play to your capability because you're wondering, you're hesitant, you're tense, you're just all of those things. And that affects your ability to make split-second decisions and play fast. And that's the reality of it. You don't want that to be the case. And I think those that go through things like that can handle it better, handle it the right way, and approach it from what can I do better and push themselves, then you'll be able to weather that storm, and your teammates will appreciate you more for that. But it can affect the whole thing. And that's what you want to avoid, I think, as a player, but as a coach too. You want to not have that situation.
No, I definitely agree with that. Because I never played quarterback, and I never really got caught up in the position when I played. I just worried about me. But what you just said about the receivers, that's when it hit me. Like, I see a certain quarterback coming in there, I'm like, hold on, man, he ain't gonna throw him. He ain't gonna throw me the damn ball.
Well, just I think I was watching some preseason football the other day because nothing else was on, and I don't want to watch preseason football. But just case in point, like, take the New Orleans Saints, right? And over the last few years, even Drew Brees' last few years, right? They had Taysom Hill, who's a gadget type of guy. He's like a running back that can throw a little bit, played quarterback in college. he's coming in the game for a specific package, right? There's no quarterback controversy there. But if you see him coming in the game on 1st and 10, chances are it's a running play.
Yeah.
Now, there might be taking once in a blue moon a play action because they know you're thinking it's a run play. So they're going to try and get a safety to bite up and throw it down the field. But more or less, he's going to run the football. So as a receiver, here we go again. I got to block.
Yeah.
But occasionally they do throw it, but there's no quarterback controversy there.
Yeah. Nah, you're exactly right. So 1997, I was getting some starts here and there, but I was still young. I was a true freshman. So, and AB and Jermaine got a great relationship. And of course, Jermaine's our best receiver. So look for Jermaine. I remember versus Florida State, we losing, and Dan come in, and I perk up like, oh, he always like we freshmen together. I'm like, oh, Dan gonna look for me, and lo and behold, that's how I scored because I knew Dan gonna look for me.
Well, you probably spent so much time throwing with him. Right? He knows you. He knows your route running, and so there's a natural connection there, right?
Nah, that's a great point, man. Man, you really just opened my eyes to something that was right there in my face the whole time that I never responded when it came to two quarterbacks. Like, how do you feel about it? Because look, man, like when you're the starter, we'll talk about a position that should be showcased this year that we saw firsthand. Tight ends. As a quarterback, you got tight ends that are pass catchers. What's that dynamic like for you as a quarterback?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, look, going back to my Wahoo days, I mean, Heath Miller, having a guy like that, and he was a former quarterback, right? So he knew the quarterback's eye, so he knew how to get open. He had a sense of timing, but his ability to use his frame and his body and was just remarkable, and was such a great security blanket. And the guys that the Wahoos brought in this year from the portal, I think that just watching them in practice, I think that they'll be more productive than in last year at the tight end position, which I think garnered something like 12 catches, right? And I think that whole position should do far better than that. But I love the skill players and the weapons that the Cavalier offense has, and those tight ends will be a prominent part of it. I can't speculate what their numbers will be, but if they're going to be productive, and I like what they bring. There's a sense of physicality on the edge in the run game for each of them, but also they can get out and be productive in the pass game and be a nice security blanket for Anthony Colandrea, with that he doesn't have to feel like he has to make every play with his legs when it breaks down. He can look underneath or in the middle of the field and find some reliable tight ends and running backs to be able to get the ball to.
Yeah, and a couple more questions. I'm gonna get you up out of here. I want to ask you again because I love to pick a quarterback's brain, and Des Kitchen's offensive scheme. What do you feel the benefits of utilizing two tight ends versus these nickel defenses that a lot of colleges run today?
Right. And well, you said it, given the style of offenses that are being run, most defensive coordinators are running a nickel defense with 5 DBs predominantly the whole game. They'll just send them out there and stay with it. And then they might even go into a dime package with 6 DBs on a passing situation just to bring more cover guys in the game. But if you're able to run sets with 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and 1 back, or even 2 tight ends and 2 running backs, 1 receiver, if you're able to do that and do it effectively in the run and the pass and still throw it and be efficient, man, that's so dynamic, because now you have those big body guys be going against DB type bodies or even smaller linebacker bodies. And that's a mismatch in favor of an offense. And then you can run the football where you've got these extra blockers blocking 180, 190 pound DBs. Like that's a win for the offense. And you really can control the tempo. You can control the line of scrimmage in the game when you can be effective in both facets of the game offensively with multiple tight ends. Even, in Virginia, and I've been around places in the league where you have 3 tight ends. And when you can still run it and throw it in that set, man, you can be dangerous, because how are you going to match it? And then teams then are like, well, we got to go to a base defense and take the nickel out, put a linebacker in. Well, this linebacker might not have played but a handful of snaps all season. ball snapped and he's unsure of what to do. So it creates it's that chess match between coordinators that what do we do with our personnel and how are you going to treat certain tight ends? Because there is something where some tight ends are more wide receivers. Case in point, the Atlanta Falcons, which I was with them on staff last year, Kyle Pitts. Well, he's labeled as a tight end, but he lines up as a wide receiver probably 70% of the time because that's his physical traits as being a pass catcher. So teams are going to put an extra DB out there, but they're not as nervous about the run game. So you can really play that game when you have a formidable tight end group with your personnel. It gives you the flexibility to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a lot of things that are very educational for the listeners, especially when you talk about going to tight ends, because I think a lot of people don't realize it's reversed now. Like when we were coming up, you had your base, and then the nickel was coming in, and it was sparingly, but it was either I'm covering or I'm just playing short zone. So it's that transition is a little easier because it's like they ain't worried about setting the edge. But now, if you running basically nickel, and I come out in a big group, and you put that linebacker in there, he hasn't been in that spot because majority of the time they're displaced. So he hasn't been practicing displaced. He's been practicing mostly in the box because you're running a 4-2-5. It's two linebacker positions. So now if you want to take that nickel out and you put a true linebacker in there, he's not only hasn't gotten a lot of reps, period, but now he's displaced. He's playing, the difference between the split. Because if you put an H out there now, one thing I do love about 12 personnel, people that don't know that's one back, two tight ends. If you're balanced, meaning tight ends on both sides, 3-point stance, majority of the time, you may have a check with me if it's a zone because I'm looking like, all right, where's the one technique? I probably got advantage running to the one versus the three because the three can really just stay outside shoulder, where the one technique we could wash down, get to the next level. And I feel like to me that's an advantage of running 12. If you want to utilize the run game, which Coach Wells always wanted to do, was establish a line of scrimmage. We coming downhill at you, but in ace, which is 12. You're usually going to say strength is to the field.
Right.
So you see a lot of teams just run to the boundary.
Yeah, because you bring that, you said it there, if you bring that tight extra linebacker in there when an offense is 12 personnel, that linebacker, depending on what coverage you're going to run, is going to be a box player if you're going to play a single high safety and bring a safety down to the field to play coverage, because there's a lot of space on the college field with where the hashes are. To the field, there's so much space there that's a lot for a linebacker to cover if you're going to play a zone coverage. So you're going to bring a sky safety down to fill in that. Well, now you have a single safety defense. It means you're one-on-one on the receivers outside. And that for a quarterback makes your read so much easier. You can just pick your one-on-one route and go to work with your receivers. So they're going to bring that safety down for run support. Well, now you might be light or you might have an advantage running the ball the other way. So that's just some of the dynamics of the chess match that you play offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. If you do want to stay too high in your defense with two safeties deep, well, now you put that linebacker. He has to cover a lot of space.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, man. And this is the excellent. This is a preview of the mind that you guys will be hearing during the games. Like Matt's mind is like I mean, real talk. Like I'm not just saying this because former teammate, my brother, but we were doing the run through and you were just filling in the blanks from what John's call. I was just like, wow, I'm seeing the game from a huge lens now because quarterbacks, you guys have to see everything. Like we could be selfish in position groups. I just have to know my job. Then as you get better, you want to know all the moving parts because it just helps, especially as a DB, it just helps of playing games, playing in between routes. I know as a receiver, you got to at least know coverage in your route and help a brother out. Like if it's cover 2, I can't take no inside release if I know an arrow's coming out. I need to force outside. I need to get this corner eyes on me so he won't get hit in the mouth because this should be the throw.
Right.
Now, if you selfish, you'll go inside. Now they didn't cover both of us. And he probably gonna get subbed out.
Yeah, and your buddy's probably going to be on his back with his helmet turned backwards because the corner just leveled him. But you're so right, man. And I know that going through that mock broadcast, like, it was so cool to, like, for me and you, like, our role, like, feeding off of what John's doing the play-by-play, but us just finding our way to convey information to the listener. And I think that's going to be the art and the cool part about what our objectives are, and to give the listener, paint that picture, because it's so hard. And that's something I found, and I don't know if you really can relate, and you've done more than I have in this space, but remembering that we're on radio and that the viewer can't, or the viewer, see, I just did it there. The listener has no idea what went on the field. They can't see it. So for us to be able to paint that picture, and listening to your comments and when we were doing it, I was like, man, like, that's such a good job to be able to do that and paint that picture in a small window of time from the play ending to then getting it back to John to be able to tee up the next play. And I think that's the thing that, just listening back to it, because we recorded it and listening to other games that have taken place since then, just that's where just being able to take that knowledge and that information and say it in a 5-second window and hope that the offense isn't going up tempo so that we can say it, because that's the other thing is like, oh, we got to shut up because we need they're going up tempo.
Yeah. I mean, John's the star. I mean, John drives the vehicle. Like, he's the voice for a reason. And our job is just, I always say he creates the picture and then we just paint it, make it vividly. And again, you playing the quarterback position, all the conversations we had on the sideline with ourselves, because with coaches, they always had to draw a race board, so they drawn. But if you think about it, anytime we interact as a receiver DB and we saying, hey, what you see, we visual people. So I'll explain, hey man, safety coming off the hash, he's standing right there. So just put it in the dare area. But on air, we have to explain the dare area is between 12 to 15 yards from the line of scrimmage. We got to add that, you know what I'm saying? Because we have to say, speak it as if somebody's never listened to football before. And I think
100%.
you do a great job of just really breaking that dynamic down. That's why it was fun. Just when a quarterback makes a great play and it's like, man, I want to hear what a quarterback got to say about that exchange. Because I'm just looking at the guy get open. Hey, we got the ball as a receiver.
Oh man, and I know how I can see it already. Malachi Fields is wide open. Throw it down. Like, you're gonna. I know that receiver, that former receiver might come out.
I got better over the years though. I usually look. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm looking like, yeah, they bringing pressure. He ain't gonna see Malachi. Like, a lot of times, selfishly when I play, like, dog, I'm open. But then Dan used to do this to me. Shout out to Dan Ellis. Dan used to always say, come here. Like, the off days, Hulk, come here. Remember you was fussing at me about this? Look what I got to see. And I'd be like, ooh, all right, my bad. Somebody triggering. they got the pass pro wrong, so they done ran a game. And then, it was like, oh, yeah, I ain't see that, Dan. You right.
Well, let me ask you this, Hulk, because I know being that you played wide receiver, you played corner, right? You know those two areas of the field. For the Virginia Cavaliers, man, what are you most excited to see come next Saturday? The wide receiver group or the defensive back group, coming out of fall camp starting the year? Which one are you saying, I can't wait to watch this group?
So, all right. I'm gonna give you my fan, the fan in me cannot wait to see our receiver crew. Like, I can't wait to see Trail Harris in a live game. I think he could be special. With Malachi, with Chris Tyree, with Sedarian Harrison, like, we got a really good group. So the fan in me is like, I can't wait to see those guys just be dynamic. The analyst side of me and like the coaching side of me really is intrigued with the corners, because I feel like they could cover better and we could get more pressure again. I just felt like last year we had to play a lot of zone. So the
Mm-hmm.
fan side of me wants to see those guys playing receiver, man, just go crazy. Because I really feel like they could be dynamic. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and you even talked about the receivers. Like, what have you seen from them, from what you saw?
You know, I'm very fired up for this wide receiver group, top to bottom. When you look at the newcomers coming in, the Trell Harris, the Chris Tyree, and you know, I know Green hasn't gotten a lot of time during camp, and maybe I've seen him the last few days, and the just between him and Trell, like their explosion off the ball and to be able to like just threaten a defense. To go with Malachi and what he brings and what he's became last season, like that group. Pair that with Anthony Calandria and his ability to throw the football, but also extend plays outside the pocket and have a scramble drill where those guys can find soft spots in coverage. Like it makes me like want to put the helmet back on and play. Like have a wide receiver group like that.
Yeah.
Like, and they all bring certain talents, right? Guys play on the outside. You got guys that can play on the inside and they can run different routes. They're not just go route runners. They're just not little choice route runners. Like they all have a unique skill set that fits the offense. Like I'm really excited to see that come to fruition and what they're going to become as a team this year.
Nah, I'm definitely excited. And it's amazing, man, because you play with Alvin Perriman. Kobe reminds me of Alvin. Like in the sense of he's just as good as a pass catcher as he is a runner.
Yeah, you know? That's something you see. They put him in routes. They'll put him in the backfield and, you know, run a seam route to the field. You know, I've seen that a number of times in practice and even in going back last season during games. Like he's not just a check down runner. He's a guy that you can run routes with and you can run him out of the backfield or go to empty and put him in a slot. Like he can do certain things and he's dynamic that way. And I'm definitely intrigued by the running back group and how that plays out in the reps and carries, and watch that offensive line because we both played enough football that we know that ultimately the game's won in the trenches.
Yeah.
And with the defensive line, the Cavaliers getting healthy and their ability to stop the run and also create pressure, because we know on both sides of the football, getting sacks and preventing sacks were kind of an Achilles heel for the team. And if they can offensively prevent sacks and keep Calandria upright, and defensively, if they can really assault the pocket and get the other team's quarterback uncomfortable, I think we're going to see a big year for the defensive line. And that will in turn, like we were just talking about the DBs, that'll create some opportunities to get their hands on the football.
Definitely, man. My last question for you is going to be a tough question.
Oh, dear.
Because I know the fans going to want to. I don't mess with this group because I ain't playing this group and they too big to piss off. So if the offensive line is struggling, you as a former quarterback, you was an analyst for the Falcons last year, so you really got to dive into the nuances of just everything football. What can help alleviate a issue at the offensive line as far as like being the play caller? What can you do if you can't protect the quarterback? What's one thing you can do to help with that situation?
Yeah, I'll give you two things. I'll give you a little extra credit. All right. One thing, do some quick game, get the ball out of the quarterback's hand, whether it's screens or just 3-step drops, get it out of his hands, get a rhythm, get some confidence up with that offensive line, whoever it is or whatever is giving them problems. If it's a, stud defensive line that you're going against, just get the ball out, move it. The other thing, move the pocket. You can run some play action, really stops those guys, some hard play action downhill, but also some bootlegs, just get the quarterback moving. From college to the NFL, everywhere I've been, if you call we call it a keeper or a bootleg, you call that, the offensive line, and they just have a sigh of relief in the huddle. It's like their favorite play because they're just elephants on parade, either to the left or to the right, just faking the run, and then the quarterback boots out. So their job is super easy on those plays, and so it's a breather. Those are the two things I'd say that really takes some pressure off of them, because if a line's struggling, it's hard to just sit there 5 and 7-step drop The D-line knows that quarterback's going to be at 7 or 8 yards in the backfield, and they're going to hold it for 3 seconds. That's not good if your line's struggling. So get the ball out of their hands quick, move the pocket. Those two things can really help the O-line.
All right, man. We need to create that stampede. We need to call it booth so they could get happy. I never thought of that. That is true.
We had some games, man, like we mentioned the Indianapolis Colts when Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis are on those edges. And our tackles, Dwayne Brown and Eric Winston, both great players. Still, that was like a week they didn't sleep very much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sleep very much that week. But when we got that first that script, that first 15 that we call it, their first and second down calls to start the game, and 3 out of the first 5 plays are bootlegs, those guys are like, all right, I can sleep good Saturday night because I know coming out of the gates, I just have to, just get in the way. I don't have to sit there and try and anchor down and block these guys early in the game. So, do that, put a couple of those in there, and it can really let those offensive linemen settle in and get their feel.
Love it, man. Well, Matt, man, I appreciate your time, man. Appreciate the knowledge. I definitely wanted to celebrate your NFL career, and you thought you was slick. He didn't let y'all know in 2022 when he was given the reins. He was first team all ACC and the ACC player of the year as well. So, yeah, I ain't going to let him get away with it. And his jersey was retired at UVA as well. Number 7, that's really retired. I know Tony wearing it, but it's retired.
Man, you got it all, man. No, Hawk, I appreciate it, man. It was fun to be on your show, and I'm really looking forward to being in the booth with you and chopping it up and talking Cavalier football, and hopefully we'll celebrate a whole bunch of wins up there.
Yes, sir. So, before we get out of here, man, anything you want to say to the fans on Bleav in Virginia? The floor is yours.
Man, kind of like I just said, I'm super excited to be, part of the Cavalier experience on Saturdays and join you in the booth, and looking forward to being in Charlottesville for the first game against the Richmond Spiders, and I think later in the season for the North Carolina Tar Heel game. And I'm just super excited. I'm so glad to be back a part of more about the Virginia Cavalier program, and just looking forward to a great year.
Well, we appreciate the time. That's my man, Matt Schaub, today on Bleav in Virginia. Run the show back as many times as you want. Make sure you subscribe on all major podcast platforms, and make sure you visit Bleav.com. BLEAV is right there on the screen. But if you're listening, go look at the video version, YouTube, the Ball Hawk Show podcast. Myself, Matt Schaub. You'll hear us next Saturday on Virginia Sports Radio Network with the voice, John Freeman. Until next time.